So thank you, Kannan, for that flattering introduction. Thank you, Avinash and DNB, for inviting me to share my thoughts today on a topic which is close to my heart. I actually have a prepared speech, but after seeing the initial proceedings, I thought, what the hell, let me talk right from my heart today and share with you some of my thoughts. And please be free to differ in case you need to, because these are thoughts which I have thought about and need not universally be true. When sustainability, the topic of today's business is sustainability and business. When sustainability first started entering the Indian corporate sector, then people started asking, what is this new kid on the block? We already have so many problems. We have GST, we have this, we have that, so many rules and regulations. And what is this sustainability? What is this animal suddenly which has cropped up? And usually it would be the company secretary who would be informing the board that, now we have sustainability requirements. So let's first try to understand, where does sustainability fit? Where does it fit in the conceptual framework? Why is it necessary? You see, if you look at traditional economic theory, you talk about exploiting land, capital, and labor to make profits, plain and simple. But when this equation was invented, systems theory had not yet been known. Systems theory came much later. Now, we all know from the basics of systems theory that for any system to be stable, you require to take something from the system and you require to give back something to the system. Otherwise, the system is not stable. For example, let me talk about a family. If any member of the family only takes out from the family and does not give anything back in return, then that system is not stable. By definition, it is an unstable system. Now let's look at this equation. Land, capital, and labor to make profits. Fine. So when you talk about capital, what do you give back? You give back your principal and your dividends, so the system is complete. You take capital, you give back some interest or return. When you look at labor, you will say, we give salaries. So labor, they give their hard work, give salaries in return. So maybe the system is stable. But if you look at land, which something humanity has taken as to be its birthright, which I do not believe it is, because it's just one of the thousands of species inhabiting this earth. But we have taken land as our birthright. Now, here land does not only mean land, it means land, water, air, all that comes with the land, including humanity. What are we giving back? Is the system stable? Think for a moment. And you will realize that it's an unstable system. We are taking out from land, we are polluting the air, taking water, polluting water, and we are not giving anything back. So the traditional economic theory does not work. It is not holistic. So therefore, we need to complete the loop. We need to complete the system. Otherwise, it is an unstable system, as we have learned through very, very bitter experience. So what do we give back? This is where the question of sustainability comes in. This is where CSR comes in. Because you take out something, you give back something in return for the system to be stable. It's a very important point to think about, because as human beings, we only think of extracting things, becoming richer, making more profits. But we also have to think how we give back, because if we don't give back, we are only riding a system which is unstable and which can only bring about our downfall. The question is, having established the notion of sustainability in the economic equation, question is when? When do we start thinking about it? In 1960, the population of this earth was 3 billion. In 2022, it is close to 8 billion. By 2030, it may cross 10 billion. Think for a moment. Will the earth be able to provide for so many people? And if so, how? Medical science is only increasing the longevity of people. And here, mind you, medical science is not increasing your youth, it's only increasing your old age. Perhaps increasing your suffering, in a way. So, how will the earth be able to sustain this huge population of one particular species? The urban population is today 35% of the total population in India, of the world. And by 2050, it is supposed to cross 50%. So we not only have a huge population to support, we also have pockets of high density population density, which makes the problem even more severe. And I will come to this topic later as to how this is relevant. So this is causing extreme stress in pockets. We are having this conference in Delhi, and people who live in Delhi know what kind of stresses this high population density can cause. So now, having established the why and the when, let's see how we can bring about sustainability. One is, of course, we are already talking about electrification of mobility, because one of the prime polluters today in the world is the industry which facilitates mobility of human beings all over the world. And I understand, although I don't have the exact figures, that more than 50% of world trade is basically related in some way or the other to the automotive industry. Now, there are skeptics who say that you are talking about electrification, but how do you electrify the vehicles? How do you charge the vehicles? You're only burning more fossil fuels, so what's the big deal? You are just, taking the pollution from the city, spreading it out to the villages. So my answer to that is a chicken and egg story. You have to start somewhere, number one. Number two, remember I talked about population density. That makes a lot of difference. Because today, if I were to take the entire pollution, the carbon footprint of India, and I were to distribute it equally all over India, the stress would be that much less, even without reducing it. So although I am taking pollution out of cities, perhaps distributing it to some extent in the lesser dense areas, it will definitely reduce the level of stress in pockets. And from there on, obviously the objective has to be that we use renewable energy to charge our electric vehicles. Then only it really makes complete sense. But to say that we should not look at electrification because we'll be burning more fossil fuels to start with, but then, ladies and gentlemen, you have to start somewhere. You cannot always be criticizing. So some steps have to be taken, and I think the government is taking the right steps, making the right noises, creating the right incentives for people to look at this sector. So that's one way to do it. Other way is that I've always asked this question as to most of us, we have cars, we drive to work, and I often wonder whether it's worthwhile to seat just one person and maybe one driver, in many cases, to transport that person from point A to point B. Is it not more economical, more pollution friendly to to invest in mass rapid transit systems? Why should I have to use my personal car to go from point A to point B? If I can have good rapid transit systems which are connected, because again, people will say that you cannot have it everywhere, fine. But then if you can have e-vehicles connected to the stations, let's say the metro stations, then to that extent, it can be pollution friendly. After all, what am I doing? I'm just transporting myself from point A to point B. Of course, in that journey, I'm connecting a lot of my ego and prestige and whatever you call it, because then all that depends on the kind of car and the size of car which I'm driving. So all those are things which humanity has added. It is not a functional requirement. So when we are talking about sustainability, we talk about functional requirements. Those things have been built later, subsequently. Third thing is transformation of the electricity grid. Why is this necessary? Because just imagine if all the people in Delhi, they convert to electric vehicles, what will they do? They will start from the house, come to the office, go back home, put the car on charge, overnight charge. If you do that, the grid will fail. Today, the Indian grid does not have the resilience to be able to handle this kind of spike in electricity. And added to that, we are talking about renewable energy systems. Renewable energy systems actually operate in fits and starts as and when the source is available. For example, solar energy, you can generate only when sun is shining. Unfortunately, the electricity demand is more during the night time than during the daytime. So what do you do with all the electricity that you generate? You need to store that electricity. So how do you store electricity? So you have to invest in what are called energy storage systems. You have mechanical energy storage systems, like the one you have, pump storage projects. You basically pump water uphill and then use hydro turbines to convert that into electricity later on. Those are older systems, but you still have them. The more modern systems are energy storage systems which are built on batteries. So actually you store the power in the batteries, use them in the night. Now, our country has to invest huge amount of money in building energy storage systems to be able to make the grid stable. But, as I said, it's a chicken and egg story. Already plans are afoot. Exide itself has installed 2 energy storage projects in Calcutta with CESC. So things are moving in the right direction, but this is something that we have to do. Over and above this, we need holistic policy on recycling. Because at the end of the day, a battery is a battery. Whether it's lead acid, nickel cadmium, lithium ion, what have you. So you require a really sound policy on recycling so that you can use these, because none of these materials, whether it's lithium or cadmium or whatever you call it, they are not environment friendly. You need to recycle them and recycle them profitably. You need a holistic policy on housing. For those of us who live in cities, in urban centers, appalling conditions that we have for the urban poor. Ultimately, they lead an unsustainable way of life. And they don't have the means, really, to be able to upgrade themselves to a sustainable point of living. That is something that we cannot overlook. We may be sitting in plush corporate offices, but if we overlook this problem of the urban poor, in particular, we cannot ever lead a sustainable life ourselves. You have to understand this. What lies outside you also affects you. The water, the air, the way they live, we need to upgrade these people. And if so, at a cost to us. We need holistic policy on waste management. For those of you who have ever visited the dumping yards of our cities, it's appalling. You have children playing around with hazardous chemicals, getting killed, getting hurt. We can't be proud of this. As a citizen of this country, my head hangs in shame every time I get to see this picture. Holistic policy on pollution, air, water, noise, with adequate teeth to law enforcement agencies. This is very necessary. Noise pollution is not considered pollution in our country. We honk our horns, we do whatever we want, we shout at the top of our voice, all kinds of things. So we need a holistic policy on that, and I think as educated citizens of this country, it is incumbent upon us to be able to induce our political leaders to look at some of these legislations. So far, someone may say that you are talking about sustainability, but it's all costs. Is it all cost? Is there nothing in it for the industrialist? There is, gentlemen. There are huge payoffs of following a sustainable way of life. Sustainability creates value in multiple ways. First and foremost, you can enter new markets. There are many countries today which will not allow you to enter if you do not have a holistic, sustainable policy of the company. It results in cost reduction in the long run. However difficult it may be to believe, operational costs, penalties, government interference, legal costs. In fact, 3M had a slogan called the 3 Ps, pollution prevention pays, 3 Ps. And since 1975, they have saved $2.2 billion through product reformulation, enhanced manufacturing techniques, redesigning of equipment, recycling and reuse of industrial waste. Strategic flexibility and reduced regulatory pressure. This will happen more and more as the time goes by. Fourth, retention of right-minded people who develop a sense of purpose. As time goes by, you will have young people who would like to work for companies who have a strong sustainable policy. It will enable you to hire the right kind of talent. And last but not the least, Avinash talked about it, and I get to hear this whenever I'm holding an investor meet, increasing recognition from institutional investors. There are many investors who start the dialogue with sustainability. If you do not have a minimum score on sustainability, they won't even look at you. So it helps to build up your stock valuation, your market reputation. So what should corporations do? A, adopt ESG practices which go beyond regulatory stipulations and which are difficult to replicate by competitors. So what I'm talking about is strategic ESG. Let me give you an example. Exide today is a huge consumer of electrical energy. We need electricity to charge our batteries. It makes immense sense for us to invest in solar energy, which is a strategic choice. It helps sustainability, also helps to reduce our costs. Today, 15% of electricity is through renewable sources. Shortly, it will become 25%. That gives me an edge over competition. It makes immense P&L sense to me. B, develop accountability mechanisms with guidance coming from the board. This requires a very, very resolute handling at the board level. C, decentralize ESG activities such that it diffuses into the organizational DNA. So you talk ESG and you do ESG. You just don't pay lip service to it. And finally, the gentleman called Ray C. Anderson, who was the founder and chairman of Interface Incorporated, one of the world's largest manufacturers of modular carpet for commercial and residential applications, and a leading producer of commercial broadloom and fabrics. He was known in environmental circles for his advanced and progressive stance on industrial ecology and sustainability much before it became the fashion of the day. These are his words, and this happened much before we started to talk about it. He says, "I always make a business case for sustainability. It's so compelling. Our costs are down, not up. Our products are the best they have ever been. Our people are motivated by a shared higher purpose. Esprit de corps, to die for. And the goodwill in the marketplace is just astonishing." Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.